Brent, it's so awesome to have you on our podcast.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you here.
And I'm excited to be here.
You know, you're one of the very first people that I've been doing this almost a year, but when I conceived the idea of doing a podcast, you were one of my first choices for a guest.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Well, you know, I was surprised when you asked, and then I thought, you know, that you did it. And then I was like, okay, this is different. This is cool.
It's so fun. But, you know, you're with Goodwill, and Goodwill's one of my favorite clients for a lot of reasons, and you're one of them. The team that we have to work with in the facilities department at Goodwill is amazing.
Thanks, great team. But we're lucky to be working with you, so.
Well, thank you.
Very lucky, actually, so.
Well, thank you. I've just been I've learned so much from you and from your retail mind. How did you end up, I mean, you've got a huge job, which we'll talk about in a minute, but how did you end up here? What got you to the point where you're in charge of all the retail for Goodwill in Minnesota?
Well, it's a good question, and it's an interesting journey. I never actually thought, you know, I hadn't thought about nonprofit, you know, when I was in college or anything, but I grew up in Minnesota, and I attended the University of Minnesota, then University of St. Thomas, where I graduated, and you know, looked at a lot of different kind of opportunities. You know, they do a lot of recruiting on campus, and I really wasn't even thinking about retail at that point. I think some of the jobs I was targeting or the industries was like insurance and stuff. And well, then I had this interview with Target, and it went really well. And then before you knew it, I mean, different chain of events happened, and all of a sudden I found myself in training at Target. And it's good, but
that's awesome.
It's cool. It was really hard work. You know, they have a great culture of training and development, but they expect a lot, you know, especially when you're just starting off. And so I worked with Target. And
what did you do when you started at Target?
It's an assistant store manager. It was referred to as executive team lead. Okay. But that's essentially what it is. And then so you
really learn the operations of the stores.
Yeah, I mean, you immediately need to tap into your leadership skills that you might have developed in college or in high school, you know, through activities basically, and because you haven't had a job of that nature before. So you're leading people right away, and then you're also needing to learn all of the operations of Target, and they have different areas. And you would spend time in particular areas and kind of get your feet under you, and then eventually be responsible for one of those areas.
Okay.
You know, with ultimately, depending on what you want to do, and you know, if that's kind of where your career is, or if you hope to run a store someday or whatever, you know, they, like a lot of companies of that size, they have great ways of developing people and helping them get started in their career.
Well, that's a great way to start then.
Yeah, it was great. I kind of, over time, realized I might be a little less interested in general merchandising. So I was kind of really keen on electronics, and, you know, I was thinking about what the possibilities were out there. And I got contacted by a recruiter for AT&T Wireless. I'm trying to remember exactly, but, you know, we ended up talking a bit, and there were great opportunities in the area. You know, that was right when this was back with like the Nokia 5700, if you can even remember back in those days. So like a really old, you know, or 8900, I think. And so, but cell phones were exploding, right? And they were highly competitive. And so there was a great opportunity, and I went to be a store manager for AT&T Wireless. And that was cool because that was one of my goals, was to kind of run my own box and have my own responsibility for the full P&L. And I'm just going to click this. I don't know what's going on there.
All good.
And so it was a great opportunity. And the interesting thing with it, though, that I came to feel right away is that I missed the larger teams of Target. So in one aspect, I was gaining kind of the industry I wanted to be in and managing a store, but you know, the store had 8 or 9 employees. It's a small box, and I missed kind of what I had experienced at Target. And so I was looking around, and I met one of the recruiters for Best Buy, and that's where I started. Currently, the longest leg of my career journey is that I ended up working for Best Buy, going through some training, and I got my first store down in Mankato. And you know, so my initial career path at Best Buy was similar in that I was in the stores for a few years.
Okay. So you were in the stores for a few years, and then you did a couple of different things with Best Buy after that, right?
Many things. So
okay.
Started in the store. So, and we'll come back to that in terms of like how I, even in the early days, started thinking about real estate, and some of that's, conscious and some of that's subconscious. And I can kind of talk to you about the retail mindset later.
Awesome.
But, I had multi-unit roles being a district manager. I helped open Best Buy Canada. Went up there. In fact, my oldest was born in Canada. So that's kind of interesting.
Wow, what an adventure that had to be.
Yes, an adventure is a great way. So we were moving into our first country as an organization. Best Buy was just
outside of the United States.
Yep, was domestic. So I was the first expat ever in the organization. So there's a lot of learnings on both sides, both from the employee experience and then the business growth in Canada, which ultimately ended up being real strong. But there were, you learn a lot, and there were a lot of challenges. And after that, I really learned that at an organization like Best Buy that had so many new initiatives that you could kind of create a path for yourself where you would jump into new initiatives and be a leader in those particular endeavors. And I really got a lot of energy from that. So Best Buy Canada was really my first, where I was doing something different than just managing stores in kind of the Minnesota area, right?
Right.
And then when I came back from Canada, I learned about an opportunity. So Best Buy, a lot of people don't know, does B2B sales, business to business, and there's a large and tenured commercial sales division at that time.
I did not know that.
Oh yeah, I don't know now, we must be going on 30 plus years. At the time, it was probably about a 15-year-old part of the organization.
Okay.
And they were looking to develop for the first time an outside sales arm. So up until that point, they were accomplishing all of the sales through a call center, basically. And if there were needs for face-to-face interactions, a couple of the key leaders would handle that. But they wanted to create an outside sales division that would work everywhere throughout the United States, and then have a tight partnership with the retail leadership team, so that in partnership with retail, you would have lead generation as well as kind of shared results in the outcomes from those customers.
Interesting.
So you really have a great relationship locally with business leaders who are looking to get into, at the time, mostly AV solutions. But then that quickly, so I got that launched nationally. And so that was my first role where I had, national responsibility across all of the territories. And then that was right around the time Best Buy wanted to work on having more of a strategic approach addressing different segments. So, one of the identified segments were small business owners and technology needs, so this Best Buy for Business came about. Well, commercial sales already existed and was doing AV, and Best Buy for Business was going to partner with Geek Squad to provide small business solutions, IT type of stuff. And then they kind of figured out, we should come together, right? Which happens sometimes in a big company. You don't really. And so eventually it came together, and I led in that arena, and that was going great. We were having quite a bit of success and quite a bit of expansion. And then there was a day where I got a phone call from a former leader in the stores, and he said he wanted to have a coffee. And so I just, I went and met with him, and he was somebody I respected a lot, and that he started talking about this kind of top secret project at the time, and came to learn later it was Best Buy Mobile. And so that was a real exciting part of the journey, because I was being asked to be part of something very new and different, and Best Buy was going to put, kind of the flag on the hill on reshaping how the customer experience is buying cell phones, which was horrible at the time. Nobody liked buying a phone. It was very stressful, very challenging. It was really hard changing carriers, and you kind of got sucked into an ecosystem, and you didn't have a lot of choice. And so Best Buy Mobile wanted to transform that, and so I moved over to that. Where that was another key initiative for Best Buy, and I liked doing that. I liked being part of something new.
Wow.
So
that's exciting.
I was excited. I mean, that I did that for about 8 years. So we had really massive growth in Best Buy Mobile.
And those were physical small retail stores. I mean,
well,
right?
we had both.
Okay.
And that's another thing we can end up talking about, but had a lot of experience and, which included a lot of travel, learning about the development of the standalone stores for Best Buy Mobile. I was part of the team that reviewed all of the real estate opportunities and chose that with the local team for all of those locations, built the models, the pro forma models, and then ultimately had to, monitor the progress and success of those locations or failures of those locations. So
interesting.
You learn a lot and you learn fast because the objectives were, really high. I think we launched 1,200 store within a store, which is like in the Best Buy store, in like 18 months or less.
Wow.
And then we, over a course of 3-ish years, I think 350 to 400 standalone stores. Might have been around 4 years by the time we got to that
wow.
peak level. And those were in malls or in standalone locations near malls.
Wow.
So, and then after that, I held a whole bunch of different roles in a short amount of time because the Best Buy was going through a lot of transformation. And so you kind of would sometimes find yourself in a role you were looking for and sometimes found yourself in a role that you got handed, and so
Sure.
did various work in labor and productivity and merchandising and marketing support for category type sales support. And that's when I really kind of decided I was looking for something different. And that's how I
Well, it sounds like you did almost everything at Best Buy.
A lot. Well, a lot. What I loved about Best Buy was that it did afford the opportunity for people to learn new things and work cross-functionally and get involved. They really wanted you to kind of write your own story in terms of where you might like to see your career go. And in a big company like that, it's kind of cool. You don't just have to stay in one particular arena.
One path.
You can, a lot of folks just want to be, the best that they can be in a certain area. Others might, I really enjoyed starting new initiatives and doing something different and new. And because of that, it really helped position me. I think you were asking, like, how do you end up at Goodwill? Well, I gained all those different experiences over time in retail, and I knew I wanted to be in retail. The whole aspect of nonprofit and social services kind of caught me by surprise when I met with the recruiter, and it got me excited, so.
Well, that's neat. So you were approached by a recruiter to potentially talk to Goodwill.
Yes.
And Goodwill is two things. I mean, I think it's the biggest kept secret. I mean, Goodwill's like Kleenex, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody uses it like it's just a thing, a noun.
Yep.
But there's so many components to Goodwill and all of the things that you're doing, and you're in charge of a lot of them.
Well, yeah. Well, so when I first learned about Goodwill, again, I was excited about the retail component, right? And I thought, okay, well, this is interesting because I was looking for something in a smaller organization where I had a strong strategic voice in, a seat at the table in terms of the direction of the organization. So that was sort of what I was seeing and targeting, and what she first started talking about all like lined up, right? It all matched the skill set and what I was. Then when I learned, it's a social services nonprofit 501c3, I was like, first, what does that even mean? And what does Goodwill do? And that's where I came to learn, about how retail helps to provide additional support for all the programs that Goodwill provides the community.
Yeah.
And that meant a lot because I was like, wow, all of a sudden I can work for a place that actually improves people's lives. Our mission is to eliminate barriers to work and independence. Well, that's a big mission. And currently we're helping almost 5,000, over 4,500 people a year. And so we're directly affecting and shaping people's lives. I think a lot of retailers are definitely doing a lot with charity and they're giving back to their communities, and they do, indirectly help everybody's life because you're getting things that make your life better.
Right.
And Goodwill does that too. We sell thrift goods and it's going to make your life great. You can donate to us and that makes your life easier, and you help the environment by keeping it out of landfills. But simultaneously, you can know that when you donate or when you shop, you are directly helping somebody, learn a skill or be better prepared through our career support services to get a job or get a better job than they're currently in, and really help their life.
I don't think people realize that as much, right?
No, they don't.
I mean, it's kind of a big secret, and not. It's just that I think the dropping your stuff off at Goodwill is kind of what people think of as Goodwill.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually one of our biggest hurdles and challenges. I oversee marketing as well for the organization, marketing and communications. And so my CEO, Dr. Michael Worth Davis, and I talk quite a bit about the ongoing challenge, which is now over 100 years old, of helping the community know that Goodwill isn't just a store. We're actually always in the top 10 for recognized global brands. I mean, people know Goodwill. There's thousands of Goodwill stores across the United States. We're one of the organizations.
Yeah, there's several organizations. So Goodwill isn't just a national organization. Goodwill-Easter Seals Minnesota is a separate organization. It's a standalone. And then Goodwill's kind of the brand overall, but there's no ownership nationally.
Nope, it's not. It's a federated model that's used in a lot of nonprofits. So when you think of Red Cross or United Way, they will have a centralized office that helps with a lot of the international marketing, the brand awareness, the best practices, kind of some of the standards for operating, and then individual organizations are responsible for certain geographies. So our particular geography has counties in Minnesota and western Wisconsin, and there's about 165 organizations like ours. They all have a CEO or president and a leadership team, and they all have stores, and then they all have some type of services that they provide their community. And so they meet those needs of the community by doing needs assessments, so they better understand. Some Goodwills will do more like schools and training. Some will do more retail training for folks who are learning in the stores directly. We do some of that. And then others like us have a wide variety of training. We have auto, and we have banking, and we have construction. Yeah, we have computer skills. We have all sorts of different programs that help individual needs and customized experiences.
It's super inspiring. But none of that happens without these stores being successful, and that falls on you. And you've got a lot of different categories that you're responsible for, with facilities and operations and retail. And but is there like 51 stores? Is that where?
Close. We were at one point.
Okay.
Yeah, we're at 47 now,
okay.
which we can talk about when we talk about, real estate optimization and stuff, but we're going to be 47, which is 3 outlets and 44 stores. Yeah. And then we also have our e-commerce business, and we have.
Okay. So let's talk about e-commerce, because that's just super fun, right?
Yeah.
And you've grown the e-commerce business like 361% since you started it.
Well, we're probably over 400 now at this point. We're honestly, we're really doing well.
Okay, so I am completely and totally fascinated. We had the opportunity to open a nice big new e-commerce dedicated facility within the last year or so, but I never dreamt it could be such an organized, and I don't even think people know that many people know you can buy stuff online from Goodwill.
Yeah.
So tell me how that works. From the time I drop my things off at a store, how does this product get moved through the e-commerce, or how do you even decide if it goes to a store or e-commerce or?
Yeah. So I'll talk about kind of the journey of your donated good and how that, and then I'm going to try to tie it in also to like, why do we even have stores in e-commerce?
Yeah.
So I think I'll kind of start with that, because as a social services nonprofit, so you might think to yourself, well, how do they run that, right? So they actually, the services and programs team work really hard to get grants, federal and state grants. And we have a philanthropy team that works with donors to get financial support. And what ends up happening is then at the end of the day, we need additional dollars if we want to continue to provide the level of support, which is second to none in the state for what we do. And retail helps kind of fill in that gap. That's what you were talking about before.
Okay.
And so for 100 years, or well, less than 100, call it 90 years, Goodwills all across the nation had stores. And stores do well. People drop off their goods, and then there's teams that look at those goods and put it on the floor and sell it. And some of it doesn't sell, and then it gets recycled. Some of it might have to be thrown, but the goal is to sell it or recycle it.
And you sell almost everything. I mean,
we do.
That's amazing too.
Right. But let's go back to that 90 years. So 20-ish years ago, 15, 20 years ago, obviously consumers started changing how they shop, right? So you have more people shopping online, and the expectation is that you have opportunities to buy online. People are busy. They don't always necessarily want to go to a store. And there's also the continual challenge of getting the right level of margin in order to continue to operate your stores, profitably.
Okay.
And so there was development of this concept of selling online many years ago. But I think early on, it was a real tough go because people, I think, were like, how do I buy a thrift good? You think about people who like to garage sale or go to thrift stores and you don't think, oh, I want to shop online, right? And so even when I first started, the e-commerce part of the organization was probably the equivalent of about 1.5 stores in terms of sales. And so, it was definitely contributing, but it really hadn't thought about how to really maximize not only the sales through that channel or the profitability for the organization. And having come from Best Buy, I kind of was lucky enough to experience, how that can complement stores in several different arenas, several different categories. Now that's regular retail, not thrift, but I learned really quickly what you could do with e-commerce and what we needed to accomplish. So I would say I wasn't even a year in when I was talking to Michael and said, look, we're going to need a different facility in a few years. So that was sort of the starting point because we knew the amount of volume we would do, we were going to need a different facility. You had asked about the product. So now, and we'll come back to the facility, but basically in the stores, when they see an item, they're trying to maximize the value of everything that somebody donates because it's in the interest. When you donate something to Goodwill, you want it to go to good use. You want it to be, even if you don't really know what we do, it's not normal. It's some type of, they're
right.
Goodwill. They do something, right?
Yeah.
And so the store, they're trained and they understand how they want to get the most value for that. So that might mean selling it in the store. It might mean going to an outlet or through salvage, and it might mean going to e-commerce where it gets, international attention for it to sell versus just the local market. And so they go through that selection process and then it goes to e-commerce where we sell.
And the facility is so organized. Everything gets labeled and
yes.
Different categories are all organized.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's the most organized, beautiful process and system. I'm just...
Well, our new facility that you helped us source, it's a 100,000 square foot facility. It's pretty outstanding. We needed room for both employees and then all the product we were moving. Our e-commerce division now does the equivalent of an entire district of stores.
Wow.
And it represents, roughly 30% of the profit coming out of the retail, we call it donated goods retail. So that division that I oversee. So we needed space. And then when you get a space like that, you need to be highly organized. You have a lot of people working, you have a lot of different categories, and we sell through multiple channels. We don't just sell through one particular. Most of what we sell is through an online platform that's called Shop Goodwill, and that's
which is a website.
That is a website, yes.
Shopgoodwill.com.
Yep, and /MN, so we can
MN.
we have folks looking at the Minnesota product. But we also sell through eBay and Amazon and a few other channels for books and media as well.
So when it goes into shop, it doesn't live online very long.
No.
So that's
ideally not. No.
So tell me how that works, because it gets priced and then.
Well, we tend to use auctions for most of our goods.
Okay.
So there are some set prices when we have a high degree of confidence of what a good is selling for.
Okay.
But as you would imagine, you not only have to know what a good is worth, and is what the demand is for that good, but then there has to be a lot of training involved. So honestly, with a lot of the unique collectibles that we have, auctions are ideal. And that's sort of why you have an eBay in the first place.
Right.
eBay is a platform that allows for the sale of goods where people don't really know what the demand is, and that demand might change over time, and you want to get the most that you can for it. So auctions kind of make that possible, right?
Yeah.
And then, there's set pricing, as you know, even eBay does buy it now, so they have opportunities for people to buy when they know exactly what they want to spend on an item. And so what happens at e-commerce is that the teams are positioned to basically go through the goods, kind of check again and make sure it is right for e-commerce, and then they'll list it if it is through whatever.
And take picture, like
yeah,
actually
there's photo stations, and we have software that's integrated that helps us list it, and even when it sells, we have software that helps us with the ideal shipping and all of that. Yeah, and so basically, when the auction starts, we just have to have a starting point, and we hope it sells in basically 14 days or less. We hope
14 days.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fast.
It might be faster. I mean, a lot of
amazing.
times it is faster. Yeah.
And it's kind of fun because if you have certain collectibles, like I like Spode dishes, like you can actually even I think because the website was just updated, so it can even send you little notices when some of that stuff comes in.
Oh yeah, for sure. And they're continually making updates. I mean, we have a long ways to go. As you can imagine, in nonprofit, it doesn't matter which Goodwill you are, you're always challenged for resources. So I think in nonprofit, you're going to always, you're going to dedicate most of your resources to the social services programming that you do. That's an obligation, actually, as a nonprofit.
Sure.
But at the same time, you're trying to, grow your business and be sustainable for the future. And so, if you could snap your fingers and have just amazing development with, the website and all of that, you would. But that takes a lot of resources, a lot of dollars. And so it takes some time to get it to where we want it. Yeah. But to your point, yeah, you can search, you can have alerts. And it is tough because you're looking for things that change every single day. It's not like we're buying the goods. We are dependent on what people want to bring, in to donate. And that's sort of the idea of the treasure hunt. And that's why the stores are still really successful. You need to have retail locations for a few reasons. Number one, you have certain goods that are better not served online. They're more like a commodity. There's something that folks need pretty quickly, and they're going to want to see and feel and touch it. And they're maybe less unique, maybe less premium. And so that's kind of what we sell in the stores and have as options for everybody who wants to stop in and see what we have on any given day.
Yeah, and so the stores are, amazing. I think, Michael had an initiative when he joined on. He's been with Goodwill for a long time, I believe, but that the stores, weren't going to be smelly, stinky old goods. I mean, your stores are beautiful. They look like, they look like any other retail store. Merchandise is really professionally displayed. As we renew these stores, you're upgrading existing stores. Yes. And then, looking for new locations and optimizing locations. Talk to me a little bit about site selection and how, you evaluate how a store functions and where it needs to be located and that kind of stuff. You've got that nailed.
Well, I think that's one of the most important components to having a long-term strategy for your real estate portfolio in retail. You hit on a couple points that I'd want to mention. So first of all, every Goodwill is different around the United States. So if people hear this, they're like, well, every store you come across is a little different. And when I came to our Goodwill in this particular market, they had already started making some of the improvements you talked about, the look and feel and, making it an environment that people really want to be at, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's people that have not stepped into a Goodwill store because they might be just donors, but I think you'd be amazed at how clean and fresh and I mean it's impressive. People need to take it out, check it out.
Yeah, and that's all very purposeful. So we started with really the look and the feel of the stores, the marketing, the brand experience that you kind of come to feel when you're there, but also we really want to help educate the public on not only those social services but how it affects the environment. A lot, especially younger shoppers and demographics. So your millennials and Gen Z, they really care about the planet. And they care about purposeful shopping, and so that was something that we intentionally, pushed in terms of our message, so that the consumers would have an interest in shopping in our stores. But then when you step back and look at your portfolio of real estate, it really becomes important to know where you're going to have those and how you're going to kind of fill out the area. And so you were asking, how does that process begin? I mean, I think the most important thing, and that I feel like we have with you, is really a shared vision of what you're trying to accomplish, and then aligned goals. It's not as simple for an organization. You can't just come and say, oh, well, we need another store, so I'm going to let the broker know, we want 20,000 square feet in this town, and should be X amount of traffic, and we'd like to have good access. That's super surface, right? So I think it's mostly important that you work together, not just with your broker, but an internal team, your CFO, your CEO, your business leaders, to have goals around how are those facilities going to be used? So the customer experience, the employee experience, in our case, we have participants, so their experience, all the stakeholders, and profitability, right? So you look at, well, what do we have today? Where are all of our locations today? What are we leasing? What do we own? When are those leases up? What do we need to do in those buildings? What is the profitability like? I mean, when I started, we had probably 6 locations that were losing money every year. And some were just kind of not doing as well as we would like them to do. So it's not just about adding in a market. It's also about continually challenging yourself with your portfolio and thinking about, okay, these 3 stores we could move and improve their results. And these other 4, they're detracting from our mission because they're losing dollars. And we've already done everything we can operationally. So don't we just, whether it be the rent or the amount of traffic that store has or the shopping that's done there, for whatever reason, it's not, profitable. So, that all kind of plays into that vision of what you're trying to accomplish. And then when you have a shared set of goals, which stores you're going to either close or relocate, what communities you're looking to target so you can expand. And that's something that we've worked really hard on at Goodwill-Easter Seals Minnesota, and that you've been a part of a lot of that, finding those locations.
Well, it's such a brilliant model, right? So the ability to have a business that sustains, some of the programs. And like you said, there's other grants and other dollars that help with those programs. But to be able to have something that employs a ton of people, right?
Yeah.
And then to have this operation. And I think it's so nice to have someone like you at the helm of that who really understands for-profit retail, because you have to run those stores professionally. I mean, there's oftentimes the way nonprofits operate and the way for-profits operate is different, but those stores need to operate like a traditional for-profit retail operation.
100%. All of the teams involved, I mean, the success that we're having are all the people that are in the roles at Goodwill. We've just had tremendous success at recruiting, top talent who have backgrounds in different retail environments. And then once they kind of learn what the mission is and how and what we need to accomplish, and we all get aligned around that goal, then they can provide that amazing experience in a beautiful store and be profitable. But then those dollars, they know that the more we make, the more that goes to our mission and improves, not only people's lives, but eventually the future of retail itself, how we upgrade those stores and where we put new stores.
Yeah. Well, that is super interesting. And because I think you can sense that with the people that work in the store. I mean, all the way from the top to the bottom, there's just an overall, I think everybody believes in the mission. When a couple of the grand openings that we've had, and to see, people line up out the door for the grand opening, and to see the employees and the management and their passion around what they're doing. I mean, everybody wants a purpose, and I mean, how great is it that you can provide employment and a purpose at the same time?
We get continual feedback from employees through both the surveys that we do and also just anecdotally that people love having a purpose. They love the connection to mission. In fact, they demand it. If we have stores where they haven't heard stories recently or been exposed to participants or understand, they'll say, hey, we want to hear more. We want to learn more. We want to understand some of the recent stories, because they know all the work they're doing is contributing to that. And I've never worked in an environment where, we have had to close some locations, that were challenges, and we've moved some. But in those environments, the rallying that the teams do to make that happen, because they know that the move that we're making is going to help us be even better as an organization. We had the 3 stores, 2 of which you were a part of, but we moved Stillwater, Woodbury, and Hudson. in the last few years. And those locations, just by moving with, under a mile, are the 1 year after we made the move, their growth was combined at 23%, where the org was doing like 9.5. So, I mean, it's over double just by moving it.
Yeah.
And everybody in the store knows it and everybody feels it. And that helps connect them even more because they just accomplished something that improved our mission.
Yeah. And it, for you to have that vision to know that those moves will be advantageous and to understand what the dynamics are that, with visibility and access and parking and even just store floor size, right?
Yep.
And how that functions, you've learned kind of along the way as to what really works best.
Well, I think the biggest thing is just knowing, how your consumer shops, how they want you to show up, because people do shop online mostly now. But in thrift, a lot of folks want to come to a store, right? But they're also busy. It needs to be convenient, and you need to be adjacent to other places that they're spending their time and how their rhythms are in life. So I'm a big advocate for, a lot of times literally a store can move a half a mile and have a difference just because of that convenience that you've provided for the consumer. And it might also be a better environment for them as well. But those little nuances are really important for how you think about where you're located.
Yeah. And then there's just opportunities for growth. You said Easter Seals has been around for 100 years, over 100 years.
About 103 now or something. 1919 is when we. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
For our organization, yeah.
Yeah, and just the opportunity, it's still going strong, and the opportunities are really amazing.
Oh yeah, the runway is very long for e-commerce, and then there's a lot of opportunities in the geography that we serve for expansion with stores, and we have a list of areas that we're looking at constantly for both new locations, as you know, and then potentially a few relocations here and there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I just really enjoy being part of the Goodwill team. It's a total honor to work for an organization that is doing so much good in the community, and love to share that message as well.
Well, I appreciate that. You don't have to say that because we love working with you. So
that's so great.
And I feel like we're doing great things together. And I can definitely say within the last few years, we've really tightened the model. We've had the most successful 2 years in the history of donated goods at Goodwill.
That's amazing.
Yeah. We've done more net income in those 2 years than the previous years combined, which is pretty cool.
That is pretty cool, and a lot goes to you and your kind of incredible retail mind.
Well,
yes, I see it all the time. So
well, thank you, but it's the team that makes it happen, really. So I'm surrounded.
And it is a good team, and
it's an amazing team,
and you're really. It's such a collaborative effort. There's great insight from all of the parties involved.
And sure.
But it's a small team. You do a lot with small resources.
We do a lot with the resources we have, but it's not just the folks who work, for me or with me, but it's also the support, to have a CEO who has the vision for what we want to accomplish with DGR and with our social services, and then having peers like Jeff, who you work with, a CFO who's right there.
Amazing.
Yep, lock and step in terms of what we need to accomplish financially. So I think we've got really good synergy right now as an organization. So
it'll be fun to continue to be a part of the growth and success and just helping to make people's lives better.
Absolutely, 100%.
Well, thanks so much for taking time to talk to me today.
Thanks for having me.
You're amazing.
Oh, well, all right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.